When I first saw nature, my first words were, "You are here also, there's no escaping you." It's like I remember that I'd been here before, but something was puzzling about this universe. Instead of seeing highly electromagnetic fields, in other words, energy vibrating at high frequencies, I saw a distance between clouds, trees, and everything else. And I looked into my body to see whether I will have a light body. And this light will be emanating from my auras, and it is a reflection of my consciousness. But when I could not see the light, I got very concerned because it meant that I'd inherited bad genes and that I lived in a world with time. And if I can quickly explain as to what time is and how does it exist. Actually, time is a deformation of consciousness. We would say that for time to exist, there must be a low energy vibration. In other words, if I was to look at an object and that object was vibrating at a high frequency, I wouldn't see the time difference between it being at a distance and near. But given that this would change until, let's say, I would now be able to measure the changes in the frequency, thus being able to see it at a distance and see it coming closer. Now, given that this would deteriorate even further, such an object would even appear to be in a still position or no longer vibrating. And this was the case with our universe. In fact, it's the case as we speak currently, because we don't see anything to be vibrating. Everything seems to be solid and still when we talk about trees, stones, and many of these things. But the sad reality is that we are perceiving this physical world with our consciousness. And that for consciousness to be at its peak, it must perceive simultaneous realities, or it must perceive what it wants to perceive, how and when. Meaning that the moment that you are forced to perceive a certain reality, you are now being stripped of your authority or your higher consciousness. Meaning that at that certain moment, you are within a virtual reality, no longer in charge of your own existence. And this was the case with me being in this world. So much that I was too concerned and realized that I inherited bad genes, because much of the knowledge that I inherited, which led me to say, "You are here also, there's no escaping you," and my knowledge of time as well as energy vibrations and multiple dimensions was inherent. In other words, it was something I was born with, which my earliest ancestors were aware of. And it was only through my recent ancestors that there must have been a deviation in consciousness, which resulted in me having a physical body. And so I also remember that I'd been here before, and I remember the future, a time when I was being dressed by my mother and went to play with my friends, and there was a huge explosion, which actually destroyed the country and was celebrated. And later on, I remember reading my Bible on Daniel chapter 12 about the Archangel Michael. And so growing up, I had a problem with going to school or being within this world, because I knew it to be a mischief, a virtual reality. And this virtual reality was due to us having agreed to be a part of it. But now that I was aware of it, it was up to me then to do something to change my disposition and those of others. And so as a child, I never wanted to go to school because I never thought that anyone was smart enough to educate me in this world. I saw everyone as a problem and a mischief because they've accepted this world, and their acceptance means that they had learned to operate within it, meaning that they've learned to normalize an abnormal or an evil committed to them by one race, which seek to give itself a position of preference or dominion rather than solving the problem. In fact, that race has chosen to be the problem. And so for me, imitating that race, it would mean that I would be selling my soul to become part of the problem rather than a solution. And so as a child, all I ever wanted to be was a Messiah, this Michael. So that in my genes, I'd always known about this world having awaited for this Michael who had proposed for the creation of this world. And I wanted to be that Michael, not just a prophet, but the Messiah, the ultimate. And so I had a problem with going to school, so much that I used to watch other kids being sent to school, and I thought that it was due to them not knowing who or what they want to become with their lives. And that they'd allowed their ignorant parents to play games with their souls. And so finally a time came when I was actually forced to go to school, and I struggled until I lost the battle. And so while at school, I eventually came across something called physics or physical science. And it didn't make any sense to me because it meant that some white people had decided that the physical world, which is an illusion, was a reality. And so studying science or many of the subjects at school would mean that I would also be drafted into this evil system so that I can be a participant rather than persuade my natural goals or my birthright as to why I was born and what talents I inherited. And by the way, me being able to perceive this reality's fault from day one has to do with ancestral memory that I inherited the most ancient genes belonging to the gods or the latter generation of gods long before prophets. And prophecy, by the way, refers to the restoration of the natural order. And this natural order is similar to all other dimensions which are vibrated higher frequency because prophecy deals with the end of time. And like I explained to you, time is a deviation of consciousness. And so when we end time, we're actually collecting all minds as well as our own DNA to be in its peak. So that our minds, when they operate at their peak, we can actually perceive simultaneous dimension and thus escape the matrix of our physical senses. Because it is when we are locked in a particular dimension and are struggling to make ends meet that we finally commit evils and atrocities, trying to make a living out of our evil circumstances. So yesterday I watched a documentary by documentaries actually by a number of scientists. And one of them caught my attention and was about existence, because this guy seek to be pleased with the idea of non-existence as the simplest possible scenario in all of reality. His argument is that there's supposed to be nothing rather than something, but the fact that there is something means that there is an underlying or a governing principle which made it all possible. And so we all know that this principle is consciousness, that this consciousness designs itself into as many varieties as possible, creating dimensions as well as becoming personalities in these dimensions. And so to go direct to the point is to say that this existence or consciousness has a persona or personality, and is what we know as God. Even though in some recent schools of thought, there's been a need to do away with the direct pronunciation of the word God, where they try to use consciousness, existence, reality, and many other terminologies, such as natural laws, whatever they try to present. But unfortunately for us, reality or existence is eternal. It's not something that would be discovered. It's always been there. So that for us to exist is to challenge God, or God experiences good and pleasure through us in the same manner that I have two arms. But if I'm right-handed, I will always prefer to use my right hand to touch whatever I prefer to touch or to do, regardless of my left hand's capability to do the same. So what this does, it explains that in any given dimension, God will choose to experience suffering or happiness through you. And so whenever you're seeing a wealthy person or someone whom we will classify to be successful, that's not necessarily the case. Because it might mean that God has chosen to experience happiness in this world or dimension through that person. And in the next, which might be in the celestial world, God might choose to experience evil through or as that person. And so reality is not something we can argue or wrestle against. It's something we simply have to accept with love and obedience, that we have no control of our own existence, that a powerful entity or a powerful intelligent mind, way beyond our comprehension of intelligence, decided to exist as us, and that it chooses amongst its various personalities as to which character is suitable for a particular job or mission. And so every situation has a player, meaning that even evil has characters, yes, that are suitable to manifest it in the same manner as good. And so our existence, like I said, is a challenge from God, or God became us in order for him to experience whatever he wills through us, regardless of our desires concerning our very own existence or that which he might prefer to perform. And so with this, I would like to say that we still have no choice but to be submissive to this power and find out its will and execute it in this world. Because the exact opposite of reality or existence is non-existence. But unfortunately, there can never be any non-existence. But if one chooses to suppress this consciousness or abuse it by using their intelligence as well as their earthly existence and abilities to make others' existence feel miserable or to make others feel less important or less fortunate, then it will be paramount or necessary for God to achieve the same in the opposite reality or dimension. And so as human beings, we have no choice but to collectively take care of each other, because each and every one of us is an existence or an experiment, as well as a reflection of this divine energy. And so if we don't want to have troubles with that which is far more powerful than anything we can imagine, that which is also has a sense of dictatorship, and we all know that excess absolute power corrupts. So in the case of God, that is not an exemption. But the only thing here is that we can escape the cruelty within the character of God by being good to others as well as ourselves, meaning that we have an obligation to ourselves as well as to the other person, rather than seeking our own selfish needs, which make the lives of others miserable. Because in so doing, we're actually hurting that which chose out of love to become us, and we're actually inviting the same troubles which we are presenting for others. And I thank you again for your time, and I hope you enjoy.